transmitting from Sector 14845. By the authority of the Guardians of the Universe, blog of Oa Lanterns, Myron Rumsey and Bill Giancoli, proclaim the podcast of Oa. You have been chosen to receive this transmission because you are without fear.
The podcast of Oa.
Welcome back to the podcast of Oa. This is episode 109, and it is December, and it's Christmas time, and I'm here with the the guardian and elf of Christmas. Is elf is okay? Are we allowed to say that? Elf American. Myron Rumsey.
Does that make me the alpha lantern?
The elfer lantern, yes.
Yeah.
At least you don't have to move an elf every night into a different location around the house. So.
There you go. I'm past that stage. Did you do any of the fun things that you see some other people post, or do you guys keep it kind of straight?
I have in the past. This year, not so much. But when I do it, I'll do it, take a couple pictures, and then I generally put it in by orders of the head of the household. I put it back into a more normal, very traditional setting of just finding a place in a corner up high where they can't reach it to avoid the temptation of touching the elf. But, in this holiday season, we are still going strong with Green Lanterns, and we do have some books to read. So we're going to be talking about Green Lanterns 11 and 12, which I like your comment. It's pretty much one book. The same story kind of told over again. Almost like episode 4 and episode 7.
Yeah, the Star Wars thing for me. Yeah, gotcha.
And we're going to do some emails. We have 2 emails that we want to talk about, and then we're going to really touch on Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern number 9. And then I believe we're going to talk about some you've posted already on your blog, the Larfleeze Christmas list for all your Green Lantern fans. So I figured we'd cover some of the good ones for those last-minute shoppers.
That sounds like a good plan, Bill. So, it's the holiday season. It's the time to give. So let's get ready to give some feedback on recent Green Lantern books.
This is Razor, and you are listening to the blog of Oa. You need to keep listening. Otherwise, I will track you down with all of my skill, and you will feel my wrath.
Bill, let's start out our comic book conversation with Green Lanterns. So since the last episode of the podcast, we've had 2 issues 11 and 12, and we get to see a lot more about what happens with Frank Leminski. In issue number 11, he kind of turns the table on Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz, uses the media to his favor, and then it kind of all falls apart, and we find out that Frank is really unstable, and he can't control the emotions, and the Phantom Ring, one of its faults is if you can't control the emotions and you start shifting through how you feel, if you have no self-control, the ring is going to change just as quickly as your emotions change. And what happens with Frank is the stronger emotions of greed and fear really take over, and Frank has a big falling from grace over the course of these 2 issues. And then you have Jessica and Simon at the same time kind of doubting. Jessica's always doubting herself, and this gives her more reason to doubt herself, and Simon is thinking, hey, I want this ring for myself because I don't really trust the ring I've got. So Sam Humphries is kind of taking the 2 of them and looking at how do they perceive this ring, and that's kind of the entirety of what happens. We see a little bit more with Volthoom. What did you think about these 2 particular issues? I'm a little bit. I'm happier with this arc than I was the first one, but I'm really interested on what your take is.
I would agree in that I found the Phantom Ring is of interest. I think looking at Frank Leminski, which is funny because it's kind of close to somebody we work with. The name, so
it's one letter away.
Yeah, really. But looking at Frank and this kind of unstable lantern, out of control of almost like a child, the way the emotions switch, and thus the power this power ring is not only fueled by it, but it switches as well, which can make him very dangerous. is very intriguing. I liked how they tied it to the fact that, okay, so why is it that it's almost a good way to define Jessica and Simon is why do they have a ring as opposed, why can't this guy just have a ring?
Right.
Well, what makes it different?
Right. Why are they any more worthwhile than he is?
Exactly, especially somebody who, was obviously training, and I think at heart he wants to be a hero. He's just, really taking it in a very, I think, a very long way. Doing it going about it the wrong way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is like, he wants the glory of the hero, but maybe not exactly the duties or kind of the crap jobs that come from it.
Right. He wants to eat the bread, but he doesn't want to bake the bread.
Exactly. I think, yeah. And so I think that's interesting. It is making, I think, like you said, the story arc a little bit stronger than the previous story arcs with the Green Lanterns. However, I still feel we're dealing with weaker characters here. The leads are weak. And I liken it to, the only thing I can liken it to recently is something like Luke Cage. Like, Luke Cage is a pretty good storylines through it, but it's a slow moving one. And Luke Cage himself, the actor, is really not, in my opinion, is not all that great. He's kind of a one note. He's big and strong, and that's about it. And even though they try to make him complex, it's just not working. He can't pull it off. Now, that's an actor and what have you, but I see that with like Jess and Simon. It's just not. It's not strengthening me. I find out I feel like when they're showing up in the book, I'm kind of like it's almost like a little bit of a letdown for me. Whereas I do kind of like this Frank character, because of how bad he wanted it, and now he has all this power, and he's kind of being manipulated by Volthoom, and wondering what Volthoom's endgame is. And that's intriguing enough to make me enjoy this arc a little bit more than I have in the previous arcs. But at the same time, I'm still wondering if, overall, when this is over, where's Jess and Simon going to be at the end here? Especially the argument that Jess is bringing up of like, maybe we really could talk them down and kind of giving it a different approach. And I don't know. That it just seems like, but I can't remember. Are they? They're not even aware Volthoom is even anywhere involved, right?
Right. Yeah, they haven't seen Volthoom themselves yet, so he's kind of the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. So so maybe we have to give it a little bit of time just to see where they are. But it's intriguing, but I don't know if I'm going to say that this book is, that much better than it has been.
And I'll co-sign that. I think this arc is better than the last one, if only for the story of Frank Leminski. I think, unfortunately, that he got turned from being perceived as the good guy to the bad guy a little too quickly. I would have liked to have seen Frank really put the screws to Simon and Jessica, because I think it would have been interesting for that character. It turned a little too quickly for me, but that is what it is. Are
you referring to like when the news reporter and the kid standing there and he's
like, "Don't"? Yeah.
I was kind of that was somewhat disappointing too, because I thought that was going to be kind of cool that they're going to have to go and now defend themselves of why they're going after what would seem a real hero, and then like within the next page or so everything's falling apart. And I would say that was kind of maybe a missed step, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, he's unhinged. He's not emotionally strong. I think this constantly wanting to be the hero so badly and not getting it has obviously taken its toll on his psyche, and that's a big part of it. But yeah, I really would have liked to have seen him put the screws to Simon and Jessica a little bit longer. I think that would have been interesting, and it would have also made his fall a little more tragic, because he didn't really get to enjoy the limelight but for a minute. And you see it in issue 12 where he goes to Coast City and he goes to the memorial and he's posturing himself and, hey, do you want to pose with me? And it's a little cartoonish at that point. I think it would have been really interesting if it had been a little more tragic, but that's just a matter of taste. I still think it's interesting, and I think Frank is a very interesting character, and I just hope that by the time they're done, he's still useful in some way. As for Volthoom, I'm not sure how to take it because there's almost two different Volthooms. There's the Volthoom that was part of Power Ring that Jessica had, and then there was the Volthoom who's the First Lantern. And there really hasn't been a good delineation of whether this is one and the same or if it's two different. And you get the impression it's two different. And this is the Volthoom who was the First Lantern, not the Volthoom from Earth 3 who powered Power Ring. So Jessica has some familiarity with Volthoom, but the Earth 3 Volthoom, not the First Lantern Volthoom. So it's a little confusing for people that have been around for a little while because we have two different versions seemingly of Volthoom. But what his endgame is, I'm not sure, and I don't know what this ceremony or ritual that he's talking about. I'm assuming it's to give him form and bring him back. That's my assumption, but it's really presumption on my part. I'm not exactly sure what he's going to. Whenever time I see Volthoom right now, I keep thinking of Voldemort before he's returned. He just reminds me of this, almost emotional vampire. And I'm not sure what he's trying to do with Rami at this point. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the issue 11 was a little stronger than 12. 12 to me seemed like too much of a rehash, and it was almost like the car was stuck in the snow and it was spinning a little bit. There wasn't much traction in that issue. We did see a little bit more about the ring. I did think that art-wise, both of these issues are probably the strongest two entries in the series so far. I think Robson Rocha is doing a good job. I think his work with expression on characters' faces is really strong. And I think in issue 12, Eduardo Panseca does a great job as well. And for both of them, the facial expressions seem to be their strong suit, and I think that works out really well for this book. I think the 2-page spread that's in issue 12 of Frank Leminski shifting through 2 or 3 really powerful emotions was really strong, because you could see that it was hard for him as the emotions were controlling him, and it goes back to Jeff Johns' rule about the emotional spectrum. The further away from the center you get, the more the emotions control you than you control the emotions. And you could really see that happening, particularly when you see that, that 2-page spread, and at the bottom you see Frank Leminski really transformed by the power of greed and how it changes him physically. I thought that was really, really neat. So I'm excited by this. I almost think that, and I use this term in my review, and somebody online on our Facebook group commented on it, that in Leminski's hands, the Phantom Ring makes him more like the Mood Ring Lantern than the Phantom Lantern, because whatever he's thinking, the ring shifts him, because he's so loosey-goosey when it comes to his own emotional control.
No, I could see that. It's the moody lantern. Really. And he is a very fascinating character that you would almost want to see him deal with even the core as a whole a little bit. But I think bottom line is, I think you may have nailed it right on the head, in that maybe they could have taken a little bit more time to have him kind of get himself up onto a pedestal where people are accepting this Green Lantern a lot more so. And it plays more into what Jessica and Simon are going through, of that doubt, if they had what they felt was the bad guy being praised by all these people. And now it makes their job even tougher, because they're kind of like, not only do they have doubt about what they're wielding as, and their role in this whole Green Lantern universe, but now you have, they not only have to win themselves over, they have to win over like a whole species on Earth,
Right, right.
And when they missed that step, it kind of was like, and you can almost see what they're setting us up to do. And again, you pay attention to the solicitations and everything, and you might be able to speak more directly to this, but I'm getting the real sense that that they are going to get this guy to turn on Volthoom at one point.
Yeah, the solicitations are very nebulous when it comes to any of that kind of stuff. But to go back to the point about Leminski churning too quickly, in issue 12, there's almost a debate between Simon and Jessica's trying to see the good in Frank, because I think she feels that if Frank's not worthy, then what makes her worthy? And that's a valid point, but I think the fact that Frank has turned so quickly, it kind of undermines her argument. I think if Frank had been allowed to be a bit of a hero and keep Simon and Jessica kind of, I don't know, on the wrong side of public opinion, I think it would have made this fall more tragic, and it would have given credence to what her point was.
Well, exactly. That would have made that more of a powerful debate. I mean, this, honestly, it almost makes her seem a little bit more wishy-washy than, I would say, having a really good direct point.
Yeah.
Because you could see why he shouldn't have the ring.
Right. It's right. He's
an
there.
Emotional nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no gray area.
Yeah, and the fact that he snapped like he did let's put it this way: if I was Simon Baz, that would have been my point right there. As soon as she said that, is like, why shouldn't he have the ring? Yeah, because he almost snapped and was going to kill some people. He was, where we have yet to do that.
Right. I see this coming to a point where Frank loses the ring, and Simon and Jessica have a debate about which one of them should have it.
Now, do you think it would go to one of them, or do you think it would?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm thinking the ring's going to get destroyed, or it's going to get locked away somewhere right next to the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
I don't see anybody keeping it. I think that there will be some debate between the characters as a way to explore them a little bit more emotionally, but I don't see it becoming anything that either one of them is going to keep in any length of time. I don't see that happening. I think, it's interesting thinking about the Phantom Ring. Boy, this character would have been a great character for Kyle Rayner to have as an opponent, because Kyle can control all the emotions and the Phantom Ring is a little bit different. That might have been an interesting story to me, maybe even more interesting than what we're seeing here.
Yeah, but I at least we can say it's a step up, for what they were doing.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's something to be said for that. I think again, we'll have to see how it plays out ultimately. Either way, and this might be a little bold in saying this, but I think there's something to be said for this Frank character and the Phantom Ring. I kind of really like his character. I kind of he's almost like a human Larfleeze in that he wants something so bad. And you could almost, before you saw some of the bad things he's done, you could almost you do almost sympathize with him. As like, boy, nobody's worked harder. He's taken his lumps.
Right.
I still stand by the cheese of the ring coming right up to his face and then going, whoops, totally made a mistake. Sorry. this isn't the address I was looking for.
Never mind.
No, you want 123 Cedar Lane, not 123 Cedar Road.
Yeah, I think Frank could have been a much more tragic character and one you could get behind if it had gone on a little bit longer. But yes, that's almost textbook.
Yeah,
Frank Leminski.
That'd be great if it was just going on to the tip of his finger, and it was like, oh, there's a hangnail. Let's get out of here.
Wait, you said Frank Leminski. I thought it was Shecky Leminski. I'm sorry, I got the wrong one.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's. I am so embarrassed for all of the Green Lantern Corps. We're sorry.
Oopsie.
Here's a bobblehead souvenir. But I mean, overall though, would you agree that this would be a great character? I mean, like, I could see this arc ending, and whatever happens, I don't know if I would. I would not be upset if Frank still sticks around, that we see him later on down the road, and the Phantom Ring, like you said, just gets stored away, doesn't so much get destroyed, and that, we bump into Frank again somehow, some way.
Yeah, I'd like to have him meet Hal, because he hero worships Hal so much, and for Hal to me, that would have been so powerful for Hal to have said to him, "No, you really aren't Green Lantern material," because the hero worship would have just, you never,
right.
There's always that thing about meeting your heroes and them not being what you think, or you not being what you think you are to them, and that would have been really kind of funny.
Or they love their heroes so much they must kill them, which I never understood.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah.
But it is there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, we just came off the 36 years of John Lennon's death.
Yeah. You're very timely.
Exactly that. Exactly that same scenario.
I love you to death.
I love you to death. Yes, yeah. That and that's what I think would be cool. I think it would be fun to have Hal Jordan come into this a little bit, but it feels like, I don't know. Right now, I know Volthoom is supposedly going to be playing a bigger character or a bigger part in all this. We're just not sure what it's going to be at this point. Right.
Whether it's going to be tying Hal Jordan down and breaking his ankles and saying he's his number one fan, or what,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm your number one fan. I'm your number one fan. But I have to say, maybe it's the holiday spirit or what have you. But I feel like this, and like you said, 11 and 12 could have been, the same issue almost. But I think the saving grace here is the introduction of this Frank character. And I think that's what's stepping it up a notch for me.
Agreed.
I say there, boy.
Sir?
Yes, you.
Mr. Scrooge?
What day is it?
Why, it's New Comic Book Day today, sir.
New comic... I haven't missed it. I'm not too late. Happy day. Timmy.
Sir?
Happy New Comic Book Day.
Happy New Comic Book Day to you, sir.
Happy New Comic Book Day to us all.
Happy New Comic Book Day to us all. Happy New Comic Book Day, everyone. Get Your Geek On Radio wishes you a merry new comic book day.
Bill, we have a couple of listener emails we've gotten since the last episode. One of them talking a little bit about Kyle and Carol, and the other one addressing some of the rumors, not some of the rumors, but some of the things we talked about last episode about kind of the online bullying and my views on Green Lanterns and so on. So one's long, one's short. So since last time you read the long one, why don't you start off and you can read the shorter one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. The last one I had a really dry mouth afterwards, so I figure. So this is from Aaron Carter, and the subject was Kyle's cheating affair. So, hey, Myron. So I just got through reading Omega Men. Kyle in the miniseries had sex with Callista and told her he loved her. Is he still in a relationship with Carol and Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps? I know you've interviewed Robert Venditti a couple of times. Is there any way you can ask him if he's going to address this? Thanks, Aaron.
So when I interviewed Robert a while ago, there were a lot of things that he and I talked about off mic that he wasn't comfortable in sharing for the masses. And we did talk a little bit about Carol. And, part of the reason why Carol appeared in New Guardians was simply because in his story, he had no intention of using Carol. He wanted to go off and tell some different stories. And he didn't realize that Hal and Carol were going to be shown in the status they were in Green Lantern number 20. So apparently there was not a lot of... this is during the time when DC was getting ready to move to the West Coast and so on. So he didn't really know where Jeff Johnson was going to leave Carol and Hal. So, he kind of went in his own direction. And he basically wanted to free her up because she didn't figure into his story. So the only thing he could figure to do was to break them up temporarily and leave her as a strong character that could be used in another book. Justin Jordan picked up on that and ran with it with Kyle and Carol. Not a relationship that's won a lot of popularity contests online, to be sure, but as Aaron points out, in Omega Men, Kyle is imprisoned by the Omega Men. He falls in love, or I shouldn't say fall in love, but he thinks he's in love with Callista, has an affair with her. I don't know. There's a couple ways you could look at that. One is, was he being faithful, or is this a case of he was imprisoned? Is it the kind of the Nightingale effect in play? Does he fall in love with his captors? Is he in such desperate state that he's looking for, he needs something for reassurance, both mentally and physically and emotionally? Hard to say. Or he's horny. Or he's horny, he's a young guy. Way to cut through my politically correctness there, Bill. But I don't know if I don't know how that's going to play into the Robert Venditti run of Current. We didn't get into that part of the conversation. I can ask him, but I almost don't want him to spoil what he may do. I know that there was a story, and I have not read this book because it was like $8 for a book that had one Green Lantern story in it. It was that New Talent Showcase, and there was a story of Kyle and Carol pre-Omega Men, I believe. It was during the New Guardians run when this took place, so it fits into that timeline. So, I don't think they've seen each other since. I know we're going to see Kyle coming up in the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book shortly. Whether it will be addressed there or not, I don't know. But like Aaron, I'm interested in seeing where they go with it. Because, let's face it, Carol and Hal have had this very pendulum swing relationship. And now the pendulum has swung the opposite direction. And for them, the wanting to be together is always stronger than the relationship when they are together, and so it's very cyclical. So will Robert Venditti bring it back around, or will he let them go their separate ways and give Hal a different romantic interest, if any at all? Some have said that Hal and Soren Ignatu would really be an interesting relationship because A, it would stick in Sinestro's craw, and B, would it make Kyle jealous because Kyle had a relationship with Soren Ignatu? I don't get into that whole soap opera-y thing, and I don't care whether he's in a relationship one way or the other, to be honest. But Carol's kind of always been his lowest lane, for lack of a better analogy. I don't know as if he's going to address it or not. And I've seen people ask him that on Twitter, and he's kind of very nebulous in how he responds. So I think he's probably got something planned, but doesn't want to, he doesn't want to get any more detailed response because it would spoil the organic nature of his story. Bill, you got anything to add?
No, I'm not sure if I saw the scene. Well, I know I haven't seen the scene where Kyle slept with this Callista. But isn't Kyle now kind of almost beyond being a human? So maybe different laws of attraction work for him, Yeah, hey, we'll baby, see. I'm the White Lantern. What do you want? Girls dig me. What am I just supposed to say? No?
Right. Come on,
I love all creatures.
And I'll add one other thing about the Kyle-Carol relationship. I don't know as if Carol was really into the relationship as much as, the comment was made at one point. I don't know if it was Robert Venditti or who it was, made a comment about the Star Sapphire ring. In order for it to really function, you have to be emotionally connected to someone. So was this a relationship between him and Kyle that was out of necessity? I don't know. And did it grow beyond that? Who knows? It seemed awful.
Sorry, I had to sleep with her. It was an absolute necessity.
I look at yeah. What are you gonna do? But I also think
I'll have to remember that.
But you also remember that Carol's had her ring for a while, and she hasn't gone looking for Kyle. So I don't know. It's hard to say.
I know we did have a nice little brief, introduction to Carol. Was it in Green Lanterns? What was it, 11?
She was in a panel in Green Lanterns 11 where she was commenting on. She was watching the press conference along with Batman, not at the same location, but they were showing other people reacting to the the interview with Simon Baz and how Simon wasn't able to definitely handle the pressure from the news reporter. So she was.
I know who would have thought that the Green Lantern's downfall would have been the press.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, there was a comment from Carol about them tarnishing Hal's legacy, kind of thing. And there was we saw her in. We've seen her in Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps Rebirth, the special, where she senses Hal forging his ring. So she's been seen a couple of times, but not at any great length. But anyway, thank you, Aaron, for the email. And our next email is from Ryan Pletch. And it's addressed primarily to me, but it says, hey guys, I think you're being too hard on Green Lanterns. You're totally right about the Hell Tower story being weak, Emerald Sight and the inner monologues and all, but the Phantom Lantern arc is giving me hope for Green Lanterns, especially for a series of books that have been pretty weak after the first few arcs of the New 52. We're initially starting to settle after stretching the characters in the books thin for so long. I think it's a good idea splitting up the pre-Flashpoint Lanterns and the New 52 ones into two different books. It seems to be working better than weak arcs like Uprising, Larfleeze, Godhead, Guy's Red Lanterns, or Kyle as a White Lantern. With both of the new books, we're getting to see the return of Volthoom, a new Lantern, a new Guardian, the return of Sade and Ganthet, Green Energy Hal, and Abin Sur. I couldn't be more happier. I like the dynamic between Simon and Jessica and how it has been progressing. It's only getting better. I also like Simon's distrust of the ring and need to have a gun. It sets him apart and shows how he is a mix between Hal's spirit, Sinestro's distrust, and the determination to do the impossible that they both have. Jessica seems to be progressing, and it makes her more of a real character, that she is still relapsing into fear and struggling with the ring. Overall, my outlook is positive towards the book. I've been reading Old and New Green Lantern for the last 6 years, and it seems to me that the thing that it makes it good are the little things that keep adding to and expanding the mythos, and not the recycling of typical storylines and characters we've been seeing way too much of. The most important thing I have to say is the gun stays. If Simon's gun has to go, then Guy's vest is going too. P.S. Don't get discouraged, Myron. The only guys these days who seem to care enough about Green Lanterns are Johns, Venditti, Humphreys, and you guys. I like hearing your guys' opinions, even though they're different than mine at times. Nobody else is doing it. What you guys are, keep it up. So thank you, Ryan. Your email is well thought out, and that was the kind of response I was hoping to see. It's one thing to say, there's this big tribalism that goes on, especially you see it between DC and Marvel fans, where it's not about talking about what you like, it's about pissing in somebody else's Kool-Aid. And I for me, it's about talking about what you like. And the struggle I sometimes have is, I've talked about this with Sean Whalen over at Raging Bullets, their podcast, because they're always so positive, and it's because they cover the entire DC universe, and they talk about what they like, and if they don't talk about it, it may mean they didn't like it, but they're not going to address it. I have fewer books to deal with, so I can't talk about one book and not the other if I don't like it. Now, there was a time when there was the Larfleeze series, and that book I found so atrocious, I dropped it after the second issue, and we never talked of it again. I think it lasted maybe 10 issues, if I'm lucky, if it got that far. And I've been critical of other books in the past. There was Marv Wolfman is one of my favorite creators of all times, but he did a book, a Green Lantern and Plastic Man crossover that was painful. In every sense of the word. It was bad. The art was bad. The story was bad. I think I gave it a 0 rating, which I've never given any book in the 6 years we've done the blog of OA. I've never given a book that low of a ranking. So it's a struggle sometimes, especially if you disagree with the foundation of the book, or you disagree with the direction of the book, or the art is so bad. And my biggest problem has been just the protagonist and stuffing everybody else into one book. That's been my biggest thing. I don't relate to Jessica Cruz. I don't find the character interesting, and that's just my opinion. Simon, I liked Simon earlier, before this reboot, and I don't know, Ryan, if you read any of the stuff with Simon before the Rebirth relaunch. But he progressed as a character, and he did have the gun for a while. And then we saw in The Lost Army, and that whole miniseries, he didn't even have the gun because he'd kind of moved past that. And at some point, I think he's going to, for the character to grow. And I guess that's my only concern is by introducing these new characters who are so defined by where they are now, how do you grow them and not lose that? that's part of the problem we have when characters are created as legacy characters, because where do you go? That's a bit of a struggle. But that being said, I agree with you. I think that the Phantom Lantern storyline is much, much better than the whole Red Dawn storyline that they did. And we don't even know where that's going. They have to revisit that because the Rage Seed is still here on Earth. So we know we're going to visit again, and I hope it's a stronger story later on. I just don't want to see them continue to lament over Jessica not being able to make a construct and, cowering when something comes. Because to me, that's just... Frank Leminski is a worthier guy when it comes down to that. You know what I mean? So, I struggle with it a little bit. And I appreciate the comment about not getting discouraged. I got a little discouraged because of the way things went and some of the things people said to me, anonymously, of course. And when it got personal, that was where it was kind of drawing the line for me. But I'm not going anywhere, If people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And, we said it last podcast, if you really dislike what I'm saying, do something counter to that. Give people another outlet. I'm finding the book more palatable now than I did 12 issues ago, that's for certain. And maybe it'll grow on me more over time. But for now, it's kind of, would I rather see the core and the Hal Jordan book split into two different books? Yeah, I would. I'd rather see the core given their due and Hal given his due, or however you're going to divide it up. But that's my opinion. Bill, what about yours?
Well, I think that there are some good points here.
Oh, yeah.
That Ryan makes. I do agree that I think it's nice that they've settled down and that they're not doing as many books as they were. However, I think to say that all those books were not, to say, well, they weren't, there were some books in there that weren't as good as the Green Lanterns are now. I'd point to Sinestro. Sinestro was phenomenal. In fact, I was enjoying Sinestro more than the actual Green Lantern book back in the, with the New 52. And so, I think that was a good idea. But I do agree that it's good that they've settled down the universe a little bit to kind of, focus a little bit more. And I agree that they are kind of still pushing the mythos further without rehashing any old ideas, considering how much, gruff we've given to Star Wars and some of the other things that in pop culture and comics and stuff that have come out and they've kind of rehashed the same thing over again. I think it would be unfair for me to say, hey, fault a Green Lanterns for trying something new. But like you, Jessica, I don't think she's a good character. I don't think that, she might be a good character with a different power, or that, she's always dealing with this anxiety and everything, but it kind of goes against a lot of what the mythos of what Green Lantern was. I'm all for changing things, but I think that's taking it a little bit further. And like you said, once she kind of overcomes any of that fear, are we always going to be like, she takes down the Hell Tower, and then, so after you take down like a Hell Tower and you're going toe to toe with Atrocitus, is there really, what other anxieties are you really going to have? At this point, and that can topple that. And again, that's where the reader has to buy into it. And all art really is that doing something creative, and then it's really up to the person who's viewing the art to interpret it a certain way, or to kind of like fill in the gaps of what they're personally getting out of it. And I think, Jessica, it could be debated that Jessica is not a good character for the Green Lantern universe, or is it making me willing to read further with her? But to that point, Ryan is correct in that, there are people who do like that idea of having her as having this anxiety and these fears that she's going to constantly be dealing with. So overall, to each his own, I guess is the best way to put it. I do agree that with Ryan's point of settling down and kind of just focusing on a more concentrated look at the universe before we got way too inundated with different books of Green Lantern, so that may have hurt it, at that point, or it was like just a little oversaturation, if you will.
Yeah.
Although, if you've ever been to Myron's Green Lantern cave, oversaturation might not, it can be for some.
Define oversaturation.
I've never gotten a green sunburn before. So
I know. I have to put new pictures out because I haven't put any pictures out since I finished it. But then again, is it ever really finished?
Yeah, I know it's just a constant going. But Ryan, thank you very much for the emails, everyone. It's always good, and I think Ryan is doing it right, like you said. I think this is what we've talked about is that and we're fine with like jabs and everything a little bit. A little poke in the bear is not horrible, but Ryan just stated his case, and he's like, this is where it is, and I think he makes some good points. I think there's some things we can agree on, but I think there are things that we're always going to disagree on, no matter no matter how many or notes or thought you put into an email. There's just some things that we just don't see it. You can never get me to like mushrooms. I don't like eating them. Don't like the taste or texture of them. And you could give me a long list of all the wonderful health benefits of them and why they make other things great, but it may not be that way.
And the wonderful thing about the Green Lantern universe is there's something there for everybody, and that's right. We can appreciate what other people like without tearing it down. And I'm not trying to tear it down, but my job as a reviewer is to provide my perspective.
Although I do want to bring up real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off there. I did want to bring up about the gun. Yeah. And it goes back to your point. Is okay. So let's say Baz and that gun is a part of who he is. Then they damn well better get it like right with the art.
Yeah. If it's going to be an essential part, like Batman's utility belt, then and in all due respect, the last two issues have been much better. It's been very consistent. So maybe they finally, as Ryan said, maybe they've settled it down enough where they've got their feet underneath them now. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, if it's going to be a crucial part of the character, then it needs to make sure that it's there visually, and the editor needs to do their darn job and make sure it's consistent.
Again, but thank you very much, Ryan, for the thoughtful email, and I think you make some very solid points there.
Absolutely. And we would love to hear from you and have you share your viewpoints. So there are a lot of different ways you can get a hold of us. There's a contact me page on the blog of OA. You can also send an email to greenlantern@stny.rr.com. And we also have a voicemail line, which is 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. And that'll allow you to leave a 2-minute voicemail. So, again, we'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts.
This is Robert Vendetti, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, we're up to Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns #9. Where we left them was what was remaining of the Yellow Lanterns after War World. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. War World, did that explode with with Hal Jordan's little outburst, if you will, there? War World was destroyed, right? And these
yes.
are these are the Yellow Lanterns who's kind of sided with Suranak Natu there.
Yep.
And so they're there, and they go to help Tomaray's world, who's being overtaken by Starro, which we've learned is now kind of a distraction. In episode or in issue 8 is a kind of a distraction for Bizarro, but we really don't get down to Brainiac, and you don't really get into we find the Green Lanterns are kind of concerned with the citizens and trying to save them for the aftermath of Starro, and they're kind of getting into where they realize not until the very end that, this could be Brainiac, when they start hitting their head on the proverbial glass ceiling, which is kind of funny because I think it was Soranik Natu is the one who hit the glass ceiling, if you were going to do the metaphor for women's lib. So they save there, but then we get into Hal Jordan might be alive, but alive. His consciousness is hanging out in his ring, and he bumps into a old friend, Nabin Sur. So now we're dealing with this kind of this limbo, and then we have a surprise guest at the end. So, Myron, what can you tell us about the Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns, and what do you think about where they're going?
Well, I love this book. I mince no words when it comes to that. I love how Venditti's making this a big galactic space adventure. I really am enjoying it from that perspective. Seeing Starro and Brainiac, those are two foes that are not ones that we've seen a lot of having interactions with the Green Lantern Corps, and I love how Brainiac kind of, uses Starro as the bait because he's already trapped Starro. Right. And we know that he's working for the Ultimate Collector. Two guesses as to who that is. The first one doesn't count. But I really liked how Robert had... he basically had John Stewart and Soranik Natu at odds with each other a little bit, playing up that distrust a little bit, which I thought was nice because it'd be easy for Soranik Natu to fall back into being a second fiddle, as it were, to John Stewart, but she sees herself, as she should, as his equal, and they need to work together. And in this situation, it wasn't working out that way. And she kind of pointed out to him that you're really not seeing the bigger picture, which I thought was nice because it, I think sometimes John is placed as the ultimate tactician, and to have him have his own biases, it really helps to make him more human, and I think it shows where he has growth as a leader. So I thought that was really kind of cool. And to me, the moment, one of the moments of the issue, there was really so many cool parts, but the moments in which the Zudarians start to attack more because of the Starro connections, and how Rotlop Fan shows up as a big player in this particular issue. We've seen him in the background, and to see him have a big role was really cool. Rotlop Fan is one of my favorites, and for those that don't know, Rotlop Fan, it comes from a place in space where it's so dark there is no light, so the beings that are there have developed other ways to focus and be able to exist and function in an environment like that. So he senses sound in the way that we perceive light. So when he is recruited by Katmatui, who was the original successor to Sinestro, she basically tries to help him understand what is a Green Lantern, what's the light of will, and she helps him see it differently. And he becomes, in his terms, the F-sharp Bell Corps, and he even has a little Bell logo on him. And what's really neat about this particular issue is that Rafa Sandoval and Ethan Van Sciver have been using the movie version of Rotlop Fan combined a little bit with the comic version, so it's kind of a hybrid. But it was really cool to see him use sound in the way that's really effectual for him. And, the whole thing with Abin Sur, I'm not sure what to make of it. We've seen Hal kind of dead before in that one space, when he became one of the Black Lanterns, he killed himself and so on. And we kind of see him in this emerald space. Sounds a little hokey. I need to see more what it's like. I mean, he says it's the place where, Abin Sur says it's the place where Green Lanterns who have given their all in the service of the Corps go, but it seems awful lonely because there's only Abin Sur and Hal there. So we'll see what happens with that. And then you talked about the surprise guest star of Kyle Rayner showing up at the end. I really liked that Ganthet and Sade, when Hal's ring encounters them, that they figure out what's gone on, and that Hal has managed to forge his own ring because any other ring would have gone looking for a new owner. So I really enjoyed the issue. I thought there was a lot going on. One of the things that I think happens with this book, if you contrast it to Green Lanterns, it's a little more decompressed, as it were, whereas in this book it's a little more compressed, and that comes with its downside too. There's not a lot of character growth. Everybody kind of gets a little moment in the sun, and the next thing you know, the issue's over. That's kind of the downside to it. But the upside is boy, you feel like when you read an issue, it's really filled cover to cover with stuff that means something. So it's kind of a combination of both.
No, I think they, Venditti, it's anytime you have multiple characters like you do, it's extremely You have to be extremely succinct in how you're telling the story and getting the right dialogue and everything. And I applaud. That's, a very tough gig, no matter how long you've been writing or whatever. And he does it very well. Again, though, I think what we're looking at is that I think we're starting to see where Green Lanterns are almost going to be better in trades. It's probably better that this is a 2 times a month, title, because I think because you are getting only 2 weeks between finding out what's going to happen next, because to say like significant events that are really happening in here, it's just really, this is just kind of the glue tying in a couple, I think bigger storylines. And and again, that doesn't make it better or worse for what it is. I think it's, Venditti doing the best he can with 2 books a month, and with the number of characters he has, and I say he has to, but it is something that it is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern. So, he has been given the weight of, I would say, the core, not CORPS, but the CORE of this universe. Whereas I feel like the Green Lanterns book is kind of an offshoot. It's the it's like, how they have the television series, the spinoff. Green Lantern is kind of the spinoff, whereas this is the flagship, title that is really, I think when all said and done, I could see if, Green Lantern's books start and they're like, hey, we're going to make more books. I think we're going to see this one continue and maybe splinter off in the 2 titles, like the core get their own and Hal Jordan, and I could see the Green Lanterns kind of falling by the wayside.
It could happen. I mean, both books are selling about the same right now. And the core book isn't getting quite the push that Green Lanterns is getting, but both books are doing relatively well. I don't think they are anywhere near what they were when they debuted as part of Rebirth. I think, like all books, there's a time where it settles in, and they're both, they're both selling all right, but I don't know as if neither one of them are really selling gangbusters. I guess I'll put it that way. But like you, I think that Venditti's really got to be, succinct is the word you use, and I think that's very appropriate. He has to be very, he has to really control the story and where it's going to go, because he has to make sure to give all the characters the beats they need to appease the fans, but at the same time to tell the kind of stories he wants to tell, and I think he's really succeeding. I think that this book reads like a very big adventure book on a grand scale, and I think Green Lanterns is a very personal book. So I think that's in some ways where they contrast. There's room for both. Would I like to see there be more books? Sure. I don't know. I think there's lots of room for lots of different kinds of storytelling. My only concern has been in this book is how long can Robert Venditti keep it up? How long can he keep giving people what they need to see? You have some people I see online saying, well, I'm not buying this issue because Kyle's not in it, or I'm not buying this issue because Hal's only in a couple panels, or I'm not buying this book because John isn't on the cover. There are people that are, we've gotten to that level of people committed to certain characters in the mythos. So is the book not selling as well because it's not appeasing to as many people because they're not getting what they want? I can't speak to that directly as to how that impacts the numbers, but I think there are people that jump on and off depending on what characters are in the book. How would that impact if they had their own books? Well, certainly the people who want a Kyle book are going to buy the book that Kyle's in. And if that's only once in a while, they're not buying as many issues. So would they sell more? Sure. Their costs would be more too. But, I think there's room to grow again. I think, Ethan Van Sciver put it very appropriately when he said that the Green Lantern universe has kind of shrunk a little bit. And that his goal in working on this bi-weekly series is to help it get to the place where it can grow again. And I think that's a very noble ambition. I think that's where we want to see it go. Would I buy more Green Lantern books a month if they had them? Sure, I've already done that. I'll do it again. This is my favorite part of the DC universe, so I'll certainly support it. I'm supporting both books now. I'll support 4 books if I have to, if that's what's out there. And I guess have to is not the right word, but I would if the product was there for me to support. Right. In fact, I'm buying less books now after Rebirth than I was during New 52. So DC, I've got some money available. but yeah, no, I'm buying. I found it's interesting. I was looking at it the other day. I was thinking, well, where am I now versus where I was pre-Rebirth? And I'm buying a fraction of the books I was buying before. I mean, I'm buying the 2 Green Lantern books. I'm reading Wonder Woman. I'm reading the Batman book. Which one? Which one is it? I'm reading Titans. So I'm reading a little bit. All-Star Batman is the other book I'm reading. And so I'm not reading as many books as I used to. I mean, I used to buy probably close to 50%, if not a little more of the line, and I'm not now. So, we'll see. Hopefully, DC keeps the momentum going because we want them to succeed and do well. But as far as Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps book number 9 goes, I really loved it. I'm excited to see where this book goes. I think that Rafa Sandoval and Robert Venditti and Ethan Van Sciver are one of the best teams DC's got right now.
No, absolutely. I think they're doing a great job, and I like to see it continue. And the Amon Sur look of those pages were kind of interesting. It almost looked like a painting.
Yeah.
And again, I think Venditti has it's a large task here, but he's handling it quite well. And I think he hasn't rushed to anything. Like you would think that Brainiac would have been exposed a lot more in this issue. But no, it's just that he took his time to kind of build the relationship between Saranac. Why do I have so much trouble with her name? Saranac Natu and John Stewart, and then to throw Rotlop Fam. Rotlop, what's up with the names? I mean, just the Bell guy. The They're like Porky Pig, the Bell guy. So, I think it's great. He's bringing back these characters with Starro, and it's been a fun read, and I think this is a good thing.
Yeah, I do too. I think this is in my perspective, and after talking to Robert and hearing some of the behind the scenes things, I think this is truer to the kind of writing that he wanted to do, but that environmental factors may not have allowed him to write. And being able to have all the toys in the toy box right now, and not having a lot of people telling him, no, you can't use certain things, is allowing him to write the story he wants to tell the way he wants to tell it.
Absolutely.
What up, dweebs? This is Guy Gardner. You're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, it is the holiday season, and people are, usually going out and buying gifts for their loved ones. And generally, you on your blog, you put out the Larfleeze Christmas list, talking about some of the good items that are out there for any Green Lantern fan. So, what are some of the ones that you have your eye on, and you've been sharing with your wife, probably subtly, I'm sure.
I've had my eye on, and there's a pun there. A number of things. Thank you for the courtesy laugh.
I got you. I got you where you're going with that.
There's a number of books that are out there that are, comics are always going to be something people are going to want, especially when it's graphic novels or collections. And some of the things I put in the list are things I put on the list last year, but they've expanded a little bit. There's still the Green Lantern, the celebration of 75 years. It's a great book, and it's just over $25 now over on Amazon. The big thing, though, I think that for me, the thing I wanted the Jeff Johns omnibuses. I have all the Jeff Johns runs and floppies. I do have them in their individual books, but boy, the omnibuses make it really. Or is it omnibuy? Not sure. I think the omnibus collection gives you the entire Jeff Johns run in 3 massive volumes. They're expensive volumes, but they're cheaper than if you bought them in trades and added them all up. But there's 3 Jeff Johns omnibuses. Those are great. Action figures are always cool. There's beware eBay, because right now people are selling the Justice League animated series Green Lantern Bank for like over $100 or so. on eBay, and I think they're hoping people are going to confuse that with a prop lantern. You can get it on eBay for about $17, or Amazon for like $17 or so. And yeah, if people are buying them up and scarfing them up. You may not have it now. I'm not sure if it's still available, but you can find them a lot less than $190. That's for darn sure, because it's PVC and it's vinyl. It's not even full size. So don't be suckered into buying it for a lot of money. Like I said, there's some good action figures out there. If you've got money to spend, if your loved one is looking to buy you an extravagant gift, Sideshow Entertainment always has cool stuff. There is a 1/6 scale Green Lantern figure that is really cool. It's got interchangeable hands and feet, and there's a light up power battery. There's a fist. There's a way you can pose him flying. Ultra detailed cloth costume, gorgeous. It's over $200, but boy is it nice looking. And there's also a statue that doesn't come out until sometime in January or so, and it's you're talking $450, but it's a huge statue based on the Gil Kane original character design, and that's really beautiful. And of course, you can't go wrong with Green Lantern the animated series. If you haven't seen it yet, shame on you. But number 2, it's available on DVD and Blu-ray, and you can buy it digitally as well. I think on Amazon Prime if you're more of a streamer. But those are the kind of things that I think are out there for Green Lantern fans this year. Not a lot of new stuff, to be quite honest, because we're kind of in the lull. We're in between that. People are finally putting the Green Lantern movie out of their mind and gearing up for Green Lantern Corps in 2020. And right now it's kind of we're in Desert Valley again when it comes to merchandising.
But it seems like there's still plenty.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of stuff to be found. You just have to look a little harder for it now.
Well, thank you very much for that update. I think keeping all Green Lantern fans, and honestly, you do a lot of great searches for like cool T-shirts and everything. You'd be surprised what you can find out there.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of stuff. You just have to look for it a little bit more.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
This is Giancarlo Volpe, producer of Green Lantern, the animated series, and you're listening to the podcast of OA.
So, Myron, that concludes episode 109. We're talking again about the Green Lanterns 11 and 12 we covered, and we're seeing step forwards there, and we're also just continuing to enjoy the Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns as they're trying to figure out how to work now with, kind of a Yellow Lantern faction that's helpful, if you will, a very fearful helpful. So we're still just plugging along here, and the Green Lanterns still seem to be staying strong. So I wish you a happy holiday and a Merry Christmas. So Myron, I think we have a lot to look forward to for episode 110.
I think so. We've got some things we're working on in the background. We are working on doing a commentary track for the Green Lantern movie with a gentleman who served as a consultant on the film. So we're working on that. I'm working on an interview with the writer, Mike Johnston, who worked on the Green Lantern Star Trek book. There's a new series that starts out this month. I'm trying to get an interview lined up with him. And I'm also trying to get an interview lined up with Jim Krieg to talk about Justice League Action. So we've got a lot of cool things on the horizon. Hopefully we'll have these things all worked out and we'll start seeing some of the content pretty soon. But until next time, treat each other well, keep your ring charged, make every day your brightest day, and have a happy holiday season. Take care. The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. And Skype users can leave a voicemail on the show's account, Blog of OA. Emails can be sent to greenlantern@stny.rr.com. And you can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Facebook and Google+. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.